Well, in 2020, venture capitalists raised a record $1.4 billion. But that money did not find its way to everyone. The median funding, get this, for Indigenous ventures remained at $0 over the year. And to tell us how he plans to fix it with the new year on our doorstep, Dean Foley, founder of the world's first Indigenous accelerator, joins us now. Dean, welcome. It's wonderful to have you here with us from Barayamal. So 2020, nothing changed for 2020 in terms of funding going to Indigenous enterprise?
Yeah, unfortunately, nothing did change. Despite the record capital raise for venture capitalists this year, which is very unfortunate and disappointing when considering there's been a big push for greater diversity.
And the S would fit into the social sort of aspect to this. So why was it? Was it that people were just so desperately trying to figure their way through this pandemic that it just didn't trickle down? Or is there a fundamental problem with getting in front of VC still?
Yeah, I think there's a few variables, and you touched on them. Venture capital firms would want to make you believe that there aren't enough, minority, Indigenous startups, to invest in. But I believe, potentially it might come down to systematic and explicit biases. I mean, the ANU University conducted research recently, and 3 out of 4 people hold negative views towards Indigenous people, and it's general knowledge within community that Indigenous people have to be twice as good to unfortunately get a chance and opportunity.
So Dean, how can we fix this? How can you help to fix it there at your Indigenous accelerator, but also the rest of the startup community?
Yeah, I mean, we can push more startups, trying to increase the pipeline. But at the end of the day, if there's perceived negative biases and that kind of stuff, people controlling the wealth, non-Indigenous might have negative views. It's kind of hard to get an investment. We've seen that with a startup in our program last year. They're reaching out to VCs and they didn't really want anything to do with it, but luckily that Indigenous startup kept persisting and eventually raised over $1 million this year for their business. But I think there's a few things. You can't improve what you don't measure. I think we can all agree with that. There's been a big push in diversity, especially around female startups and access to capital, and there needs to be a lot more done. But over the last 10 years, VCs have doubled their investment, despite some of the setbacks. Like in Victoria, and women-founded firms, dropped 28% in 2018 to 20% in Victoria this year. So there needs to be greater improvement across the board. But I think until the VCs kind of put their money where their mouth is and pledge to try and commit, 3% of their $1 billion VC funds, we won't see much progress.
Okay, so first of all is recognizing that there is a problem, talking about it, and then getting in front of the right people to make sure that message is heard. Dean, in your experience, when you do go to some of these firms and you do speak of the issues, are they self-reflective to recognize that there is an issue and that they are working and willing to address it? I mean, or are you still having doors closed to you?
Well, we reached out to a whole bunch of VC firms across Australia. Most of them didn't get back to me, and then they came up with, arguably lame excuses like they don't measure, they don't ask if the people are Indigenous, although I know, they are measuring and asking people about other demographics. So I guess, there's a part of it that they don't really care. It's not high on their priority list. And again, there's this belief that the quality isn't there. There's not enough Indigenous startups going to them. But we're seeing the same challenges over in the US too. There were studies in 2017 with the major VC firms there, almost 5,000 investments, and only 1.9% went to Latinos, and 1% went to people who identified, as Black, despite both of those groups making up 32% of the US population. So, I think there's a few questions to be asked, and what we're asking is for VC firms just to commit only 3%. Most of the government and large institutions where they get their money from are committing to 3% employment to create opportunities, and we're just asking 3% pledge. Like, if they don't reach it, we're not going to hound them and say they're bad, but if we're measuring it, then we can improve it, and programs like Barayamal can help the entrepreneurs get to where they need to be, perceived to be, so the VCs can invest in them.
Okay, so I would like to leave on a positive note as we head into 2021. Tell me just a bit about one Indigenous startup that you think is really deserving of some capital. Tell me about what they're doing. Just give us an example.
Yeah, I guess one on top of the mind would be the one in our program. We had a lot of tough love with them to get them up to progress, but they ended up raising over $1 million. AI, trying to use phone AI identification with your teeth, to solve kind of like a dental health checkup, just using your phone, right? So that's one of them. That's amazing idea, needs the funding, and should get it. If there's challenges with the VCs, with their criteria, that's something we can work around.
Well, I'm sure if anybody watching would like to learn more, they can get in touch with you, Dean, at Barayamal. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to touching base in the new year.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks for having me on your program.
Thank you, Dean Foley there joining us.